What up, y'all? Tina here, and welcome to Live and Locked In. And this is going to be on the interview section of my page. And today I have my homie, the Broken Nerd, aka Daryl Maloney. Daryl, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I am doing great. So let's just get into it. The reason I wanted to interview is because people like you are literally hidden figures. We don't know that you exist for the most part.
Right.
Now, for people who work in the industry, of course, you probably know your peers. People know you. But if you walk into the grocery store, people probably don't know that you're the guy who's created some pretty elaborate things for one of the biggest studios of all time. Okay? That is my introduction to you. So my first request is, can you tell everybody what is it that you do? Because you're multifaceted in a lot of different things. So tell us, what do you do, Daryl?
So I mostly 3D model, and I do some concept art in terms of 3D modeling. So and then when I say 3D modeling and concept art, I kind of blend the two. I'm not like your traditional concept artist where they tend to like sketch in Photoshop and kind of blend those things. I strictly 3D model my concept art, and I was really focused on the prop side. I've done some costumes pieces as well. But yeah, I mean, I 3D print as well. I had a YouTube channel. It's still there, but I don't not focused on it as much right now. But yeah, like and that honestly, the YouTube was kind of what pushed me into the film into TV side, so it kind of worked out in my favor.
Yeah, and I will post his YouTube channel so y'all can see. All right. Next question. Can you tell everybody like how you got started? How did you get involved in this industry?
So I mean, I'll start from like the very, very beginning. So I actually have I was in the medical field for 10 years. And ended up leaving, and I started doing graphic design because I was always into art when I was younger, and I was actually supposed to go to school for it. My friend had a business, and he was like, "Hey, can you do some design work for me?" And that kind of threw me into graphic design. And in the midst of that, I discovered 3D modeling. That was back in like 2014. Got really hooked on 3D modeling, and maybe about a year and a half into discovered 3D printing. And then I was like, I wanted to do a YouTube channel. So that started, I think I started the YouTube channel in 2017, if I'm not mistaken. And then that kind of, it took off for me in my little world. Like I was expecting to get like 10 views, and then I ended up catching the attention of Adam Savage, and I was working with him and his team for a little while. And from there, my good friend now, his wife, they're both my good friends. His wife had reached out to me during COVID, and she was like, "Hey, my husband wants to talk to you." And I'm like, and at the time I didn't know, I was following her, she was following me, and I knew her because she was like a big time cosplayer. And she DM'd me and she was like, "Hey, my husband wants to talk to you." I'm like, "Why?" And I was like, at the time I didn't like, and I told my wife, I was like, "The girl's husband wants to talk to me." And my wife was like, "Well, see what they want." So I pick up, gave her my number. They called me, and he was like, "Hey man, I've been following you for a while. I think you're ready." He's like, "I work for Marvel, and I think that you're ready." He was like, "Would you like the opportunity?" I'm like, "Of course."
See why you should get married and listen to your wife. See what your wife does for you.
And from there, he introduced me to the costume designer for that show, which was Miss Marvel. And then right after that, not only after that, in between that, he introduced me to the prop master, which was Russell Bobbitt for Marvel. Russell immediately put me on Falcon Winter Soldier, which I did my first prop for. It kind of just went from there. Yeah, that's how I kind of got my friend Chris, man. And he's been great, man. He's been my like we just hit it off. So he's been the person that got me into the film industry. So that's how how it worked out.
Now, just so I can get this timeline together, because we're going to get into Marvel later, but just to break it down for people, you're essentially saying you started out on YouTube, you learned about 3D printing, and audience starts to grow, and someone, cosplayer, I guess you guys start following each other, and she's then married to someone who's connected to Marvel?
They both work for Marvel. And unbeknownst to me, I didn't know that either one of them worked for Marvel and did film work. When they contacted me, I thought, honestly, to be honest with you, my first thought was that maybe her husband wanted me to do a commission. So that's what I thought initially. But then when I spoke to him, he was like, "Hey," as the conversation was happening, I'm on the phone. I'm like trying to wave down my wife. I'm like, and I hung up the phone, and she was like, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "Yeah, that actually happened." It was, the crazy part was a lot of people prior to that, people were like, "Well, you should work for Marvel. You should work for Marvel." I'm like, that'll never happen.
Exactly.
That was my thought process. It'll never happen. And it wasn't something I was like actively gunning for. Because in my mind frame, I'm like, that's such a unattainable goal. not to say that somebody shouldn't have said it and go for it, but it just in my mind and where I was at that point in time, I was just like, yeah, that's not happening.
Right. And you know what? I'm glad you mentioned that, because that rolls into my next question, which you kind of answered, but I just want you to dig into it a little bit more. So for the little 13-year-old boy who may feel like, dang, I can never partner with some of these big studios to create these cool things, like what advice do you give to like parents with creative children or even young adults who may want to break into the industry? Like, what advice do you have?
I'd say work at your craft. And I think the biggest thing is not to become discouraged. There was a lot of road bumps in terms of me even getting to where I'm at today. But I would say, and then instill that passion in them. Because and one thing I tell people is that some people will say they have a passion for something, but you don't know if you really have that passion until it's tested. I realized how much I love doing it, because we will spend weeks on a single thing and I'll never get tired of it. And that's why I knew I had a passion for it, you know? Like, so like have passion, keep them motivated, and just nurture them, nurture their talent.
Right.
Like keep at, like my son, like now he's starting to draw and I'm keeping after him about drawing. Cause he'll leave it for a couple weeks and I'm like, son, did you draw something? Like keep drawing, don't stop, keep at it. Yeah. Just encouragement. And
what role did your parents, specifically maybe your father, play into, you know, what you have going on? And the reason that I bring that up is, like I said, mostly in our community, it's hard for people like us. If we don't see people like you, we don't know people like you exist. And I think a lot of times, specifically with parents who are not, how do I say this? They're not aware of these things that are out there. Sometimes they will discourage, like, no, you need to go do this. Don't do that. So like, what role did your parents play into you becoming who you are?
My dad, I lived in New York up until I graduated from high school. And I remember like when I was younger, when he would get off of work, he would take me to the comic book store and we would buy Marvel cards. And I still have the book that he made. So what he would do is he would buy Marvel cards and he would collect his set, and any extras that he had, he would put in a wooden box. And then if he had triple of those, he would put a copy in my book for myself. And so that's how and then also my brother at one point worked for DC Comics and he would send us comic books whenever he had a chance. But I just remember my dad, like he would take me to go get Marvel, and then he would always be on me about drawing. He would like I said, in terms of nurturing it, he always nurtured me, trying to advocate for me drawing. So he would take me to the art store, get me enrolled in like outside of school some art classes. Unfortunately, my dad didn't get to see any of this. He passed away in 2019, right? Like a couple years right before all this started. And I remember like before he passed away, we would go to the movies and go see like Infinity War or whatever.
Yeah.
So he didn't get to see, and then, like all the time, my wife, she's like, even my mom, she's like, I wish your dad could have saw, you know, all of this. And I know he would have been like ecstatic about it.
Yeah. What's your collaboration process with, like, when you're partnering with like other companies or studios? Does it differ from project to project? Or tell us a little bit about collaboration.
So my experience is a little unique in the terms of where I was kind of limited to one person. I don't know if that was a good or a bad thing. For most of my stretch with Marvel, I was really working closely with Russell Bobbitt. And then outside of that, I did a couple other things, and I was working with some other costume designers. At first, it started off where he had John Eves, he's a phenomenal concept artist, would draw the parts, and then whatever those props or whatever it is that needed to be 3D model, Russell would have me, he just sent me the concept art and be like, hey, can you model this so we can prep it for either 3D printing and whatever manufacturing process they had to go through. And then at a certain point, he was like, hey, you come up with this. I think it was, to be honest with you, and let me step back. I keep forgetting about this. When my first prop was Falcon and Winter Soldier, and he did give me the reins. He was like, hey, this is what it kind of needs to look like. And then he was like, have at it. And then that's kind of how we established our relationship. But then that shifted into, he was getting concept art from John Eves, and then I would model them.
Right.
And we kind of shifted back. I think it may have been She-Hulk where it kind of like really started. But then I remember like in particular, like full-fledged into it was Guardians of the Galaxy. Where,
and that was 3, right?
Kind of took that reins in terms of like just coming up with stuff. And so that was a process like he would go through. And then it's a constant back and forth between he and I,
of course, the
director. There was even one where like he was directly talking to Kevin. I remember it was a Saturday. Like he was like, hey, can we get this done? I'm like, yeah. He's like, yeah, I got Kevin Feige on the on the other side. And like, it was direct, like notes coming back on like Saturday. I'm like, this is crazy.
So to put it into perspective, because I want people to really like understand what you do. So let's just say Guardians of the Galaxy, for example. So they'll say, hey, we need you to do a gun for Gamora. And let's just say hypothetically, they already have the concept art drawn up for you.
Mhm.
Is it then your job to 3D? Well, let's don't jump to 3D printing. Is it your job to then come up with the concept so they can visualize it, and then you also 3D print it, or does it just differ from project to project?
So it's funny that you bring up Gamora's gun, because that's the exact gun that I did for Guardians of the Galaxy.
Right.
Well, one of them. So like, let's take her gun for example. That was strict. That was purely they didn't have any concept art for that. So Russ said, hey, we need a gun for Gamora. So I came up with the design for it. Kind of a step that I eliminate is having to take the drawn art into 3D modeling, because when I present that render, that is the concept art, right?
Right.
And so from there, once it's approved, then I'll go back and like engineer it so that it, whether like if the gun calls to be like, the triggers need a spring so that it can actually like look like she's pulling the trigger. So I go back and add that stuff, and then whatever changes that either James Gunn had or Russell had, go back and make that. Other projects, depending on what it is, if Russell already has somebody drawing the art, he would say, hey, we need a 3D model so we can actually make this thing.
And that's why, you know, when we were talking, I was like, you do so many different things, and I want to make sure that I'm asking the right questions so it can come across the correct way, because I do know people who just specifically do the 3D modeling for presentations.
Right.
And then I do know people who do just purely concept art. I know, you know, so I wanted to be very specific on what you do, and it sounds like you do a lot of different things. So that's why I wanted to be clear on that. And we're going to get into Marvel a little bit later. But I would say, what project or character design may have challenged you the most?
It was two that was really challenging. One was Miss Marvel's bangle. Now there was already concept art for that, so I didn't do that design per se. And we actually ended up getting two different designs, one from BizDev, one from one of the assistant costume designers, I believe. And there was just a lot of back and forth on that one. And there wasn't like I don't think they were like fully settled on the design choice and where they were going with it. And so we were actively changing it. And then even the process of modeling the bangle, there was some engineering that we needed to get into there so that when it goes on her wrist, that it actually makes sense with the design.
Of course.
We were trying to figure that part out. And then, you know, the human wrist there's not a full radius around the wrist. So it's where, you know, kind of deformed. So we had to form it to her arm because the bangle was supposed to be tight fitting on her arm, but also visually make it look like there's no deformity to it. And then just the design elements on the bangle as well, then breaking that bangle apart so that we can manufacture it. And I think at one point they were going to send it off to a jeweler to have it
It's crazy.
Yeah. And that one, and then one of the most like simplest props, and it was in a movie for like a little while. We labeled it the hexahedron in Guardians of the Galaxy 3. It was that it was like this ball, and that ball was probably like 3 weeks of work. and it was really about like design choices. Like we would go back to like, and you never see all these details in the actual piece on camera, but just even down to how many veins were in this part. We went through so many different color choices for the metal, and we just kept revisiting. So those were the two projects that like stood out to me, and I think it's just the amount of time we spent on them. Just coming up with design choices and running through the process.
Yep. It's people like you that like I'm always rooting for, and it's people like, no, I'm serious, because sometimes on social media, like I don't think people realize like how detailed and how hard you guys work on like the smallest thing. And sometimes you can see people just be quite dismissive of projects or movies or TV shows that may not work out how they wanted. And I'm always rooting for, take it back. We know the James Gunns and the Ryan Cooglers and the Michael B. Jordans. We know the stars, but it's so much that you guys do behind the scenes that people don't know. Like you, even as big as Ruth Carter is, I don't think people still really know what Ruth Carter does.
Right.
And I wish you guys just got a lot more recognition. I wish you guys were interviewed a lot more so they can hear these stories. Like, I worked on a freaking ball for Guardians of the Galaxy to get the veins right. It's things like this that people don't know exist, and how much hard work that you guys do on these projects. And I always tell people, I'm always going to root for the little guys.
I totally get what you're saying. You know, a lot of work goes into it. I even got to the point where, you know, a lot of people, like, they see stuff on screen, they're judgmental, especially because I came from the maker space.
Right.
And, you know, a lot of times you hear people be judgmental in terms of like props or whatever's on screen. And what I've learned is that, and I try to express this to everybody, is that you shouldn't be that judgmental on a piece, because what you don't know is how much time was allotted for that art. They literally came to them 2 days before and say, hey, we need to come up with this thing. And that person had to work with what they had at that time in order to get that part done. So, you know, my hat's off to everybody in the industry that works hard and contributes to the projects, because, you know, a lot of time, passion, and work goes into these projects that people really don't get to see or even appreciate, because they don't know what goes into these parts.
And it's so many moving parts.
Right.
Man, it's just it's we'll get to Marvel later, but I the machine of Marvel it's different, is what I'll say. But we'll get to Marvel later. What is your next dream project? Like, what's the next project you really want to work on? Is it something like maybe with another studio, or is it something you just want to work on individually? What's the next dream project?
I honestly would love to work on something in like House of Dragons. Just something in that era. And I've been trying to figure out like how I can get in that space. I love that kind of detailed work. I would love to do that scale of detailed work.
Right. Why is AI dangerous? Why are some creatives wanting to keep it away? Why are some people wanting to embrace it? What is your take on AI?
My stance with AI is that I don't have an issue as long as it's being used as a tool. The issue comes in where, for me, I can't speak for anybody else really, but for me is where people pass it off as, this is what I did. Like, you just type in a prompt and then you pass off. And not even that as much as I've seen this online where they will down an actual artist for the AI. So they will speak negatively or trash an actual artist or the fact that they're using AI.
Right.
So that's where the issue lies for me. If an artist is using it as a tool to help them produce stuff or start off an idea, that's fine. I don't have no issues with that. And I feel like that's what AI should be used as a tool, not as a means or a crutch for you to jimmy your way through something, or get ahead in versus somebody that's taking time, years to perfect their craft. I mean, people could even say that. I even had backlash in terms of like Meep 3 modeling versus somebody that traditionally sculpts. But my pushback and my frame of thinking is that AI has the ability to like wipe us out completely in terms of artistic wise, at least when like Photoshop came in or ZBrush came in where you can sculpt, it still took that artistry, or it still needed that hand of art, or even like a person, like anybody can sit down and type a prompt and come up with the art, but it still take time and some artistry to go into ZBrush and sculpt something, right? And a sculptor, somebody that sculpts tradition can go into the sculpting program, learn the tools, transition that frame or that workflow over to the 3D program, and now be able to work out of that.
Right.
That makes sense?
Yeah, no, it makes sense for sure. Anok in her Akasha costume. Fire. I'm biased because I love Akasha. Okay, that's my girl. How did that design and that process come about?
That wasn't my design. That was,
of course, I know it was completely like.
That was.
But I'm saying, did they call you up? How did that process come about?
So I work with. I actually met him on the set of Miss Marvel. This is costume design. His name is Mio, and Mio does a lot of theater work. He does a lot of work in the fashion industry as well. And him and I kind of developed a relationship after Miss Marvel. And he would always call me for like, hey, I got this thing going. Can you model this for me? Model this. So with this one, this was kind of like, hey, I have this costume that we're going to do for Halloween. I think it was like 3 days before Halloween. I was like, Mio. So he was like, hey, can you do it? I was like, absolutely. So we hopped on. He sketched up. He already had the sketches ready to go. And just kind of like the same process with Marvel. He just sent me the sketches and I 3D model it. And we kind of go back and forth with design changes. And Mio, one thing about Mio, I've learned a lot from him.
Yeah.
Working with somebody like him has been kind of, has been a blessing because he's very particular about design choices and how things flow. And that was something I wasn't paying attention in my own work to until I started working with him. And that kind of transpired over to my own work. But that's how that came about. And that was a fun one. I remember that deadline was tight. Like I stood up late doing that one, and he got it done. And like I was like 2 days after Halloween, we saw the pictures, and he sent me some pictures afterwards, and I was like, came out awesome.
Crazy. But I'm saying, like, how does that work with, I'm assuming, of course, you guys are not in the same place. So how does it work with making sure it fits? It like, is it just specifically I'm sending over her size and you're just nailing it down to a T?
Sometimes it's sending over sizes, but like Mio in particular, he will body scan the individual. So they'll just send a scan over and I'll model on top of the body scan.
Got it. Makes sense.
And that's like the ideal situation. And then sometimes it doesn't have like there's just no access to the person for that. So we're working over just measurements, and then I will pull in like I have like dummy models that I have in the program, and I'll just scale them to size, and then they kind of go from there. And then we'll print one, and I'll send the file, they'll print one, and it's like, okay, you need to bring it in here, adjust it here, we do that, and then boom, we got a perfect fit after that. So that's how it works.
I want to know what you did. Did you do like everything? Like, did you do the crown?
So I did the crown, the cups, and the arm, like the bangles for bangles. Yeah.
I remember and that was a couple years ago. I remember seeing it, and I was like, whoever did this is like crazy. Like,
yeah, I could only take credit for the 3D modeling. Mio,
of course,
he's fantastic in terms of like the finished work. Like him and his studio, they do great. They do awesome work.
But even like the whole collaboration of you guys just working together, I'm like, this is pretty spot on. This is pretty spot on compared to what Aaliyah had on. But I've never seen a bad Akasha cosplay in my life. For some reason, some people always nail it. I don't know if you've seen Megan Good's. She did it last year.
Oh, did she?
I've never seen a bad Akasha. Like, they right every time. All right. So next up, let's get into some Marvel stuff. So you have a pretty impressive Marvel resume. You worked on a lot of things, obviously, like you said from earlier, from Phase 4 and Phase 5. I see Brave New World, Agatha, Echo, Guardians 3, Werewolf by Night, She-Hulk, Hawkeye, No Way Home, Loki, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Miss Marvel, Thor: Love and Thunder. Yep. Out of that whole list, what was your favorite project to work on?
I'd probably say Miss Marvel, only because I was simultaneously working on two sides of the house. I was working on props and costumes. My first completed part was Falcon and Winter Soldier, but while I was working on Falcon and Winter Soldier, I had just started doing Miss Marvel as well.
Mm-hmm.
And just that whole experience and the people I got to meet, those relationships carried over. And I actually got a chance to go down to Atlanta and go on set and kind of see what was going on down there, meet everybody.
Right.
I was actually an extra in Miss Marvel, one of the scenes. I promise you won't be able to find me. They had me in this costume. They had dreads and but yeah, it was a good experience. So Miss Marvel was my favorite because like I said, it was the first one, and then being able to bounce between the two departments. It was
right.
It was a learning experience, but it was a good experience as well.
I heard through the streets that you created Wiccan's crown. Is that true?
how can I? So let me say this. It starts off with like I'll start off with the design, but I think us as artists and in this industry, we can never take full credit for the actual finished product. So the better question is, did you start off the design? Absolutely. So like processes, Russell say, hey, we need a crown for Wiccan.
Mm-hmm.
Start off with I think I have 10 different designs for that crown.
Right.
And then it goes back to the costume designer and he says, hey, let's move it in this direction. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then make adjustments. Hey, make it a little like this, add this. And then it goes from there. So I don't ever want to sit there and say
take full credit for it.
Right. And you have people that do that. And
Mm-hmm.
I know full and well, and people in the industry know full and well that that's not the case because it takes to put these parts together. But if you're asking if I came up with the initial design, yes.
You came up with the initial design for Wiccan's crown, okay? I just want people to know, okay? Okay. You came from Daryl. But yo, let me tell you something. When his crown appeared and Billie Eilish's crown played at the same time, I sat up. I was like, oh, what's going on here?
You should see me in a crown.
The internet went crazy. They was like, look at the crown. Look at the crown. Oh my God, the crown. People talked about that crown, I know, for a week straight. People went crazy over the crown. But what can you tell us about the design process of Wiccan's crown? I know you said you came up with the initial design of it, but was there any influence from Wanda's crown, or was this just yo, I'm just gonna tell me about Wiccan and I'm just gonna come up with designs? Tell us about Wiccan's crown.
So when Russell gave me the task, I didn't there was no initial notes or anything.
Mm-hmm.
Going into it, my thought process was always okay, I want to grab some of the design elements off of Wanda's crown. And
Stop. Before you go any further, why do you think it was important to have that parallel a mirror?
Because that's her son, and I wanted to tie it back to her. I wanted there to be some sort of correlation to her. So that was my thought process when I went into it initially. So in the comic books, he has a straight band.
Mm-hmm.
That was my very, very first version. I had the band going across, but I had all those intricate weaving details in it. And I actually had alternating colors as well. I'm hoping at some point I can release some of the initial designs before we ended up down that way. Because it kind of evolved into what it is, what you saw on screen.
Mm-hmm.
So that design element was always there in terms of all that intricate weaving stuff. And we did a couple like that. We did a couple with the crown, actually horns kind of go up like this.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did one initial one that actually had similar horns to Wanda's crown.
Right.
The horns actually came up just like hers. And they saw that one and they really gravitated towards that one. And they were like, hey, add these little elements and kind of take away some of the stuff. And then that evolved into what you see now. And then one thing that I did get from costume designers was that Billy has these rings on his costume, Wiccan, in the comic books. And so they were find a way to add that into the crown. So if you pay attention to the crown, there's rings behind those design elements. Crown. So that's how we kind of came to that final one.
So, and I just want to talk about the importance of the the mother-son situation. Because I've heard sometimes, people want to make sure they're different, but it sounds like you wanted to lean more so into that relationship. I guess why not just make it he's completely his own individual? Why did you want there to be a connection between his crown and Wanda's crown?
Just a way to tie back the two. When the crown came out online, I seen in the comments a lot of people picked up on it. They were like, oh, it's Han's crown. And that's what I was going for.
Yeah.
I wanted you to say that's her son. And
for sure.
kind of in my own little word, I'm whoever created Wanda's crown, it came from the same place as Wiccan's crown. Now, that's not canon. That's not anything. That was just my little thought process.
Right.
But outside of that, that was my initial thought. I'm it would be cool if this thing looked like Wanda's and it came from kind of the same place that it first came from.
You caused the uproar. I'm just telling you right now, you caused an uproar about that crown. Like, people were just talking about it for like weeks and weeks and weeks. And it's always so funny to me for people who are not in the industry. So many conspiracy theories that are out. So some people are like, yeah, they made the crown look specifically like this for this reason and this and that. And I'm like, man, if y'all only knew, like.
And I'm gonna say right now, sometimes it's not even that deep. Like, people. I could tell you about some other ones, but I'm like, I seen some notes. I'm like, yeah, it wasn't that deep. Like,
hey, look, I get it. Look, people be mad at me sometimes because I just be like, y'all, I don't think that's what it is. They.
No, but you know what? It's great because it keeps the fans
Yes.
involved. It keeps them, it keeps them interacting with the content. So,
Right.
I'm like, hey, let them have that.
And I think sometimes, of course, Marvel sees all this stuff. So I think sometimes when the fans run off with all these theories, they probably like, you know what? Yeah, that is what we was.
I follow a lot of people on YouTube that do like the theories and go and dive deep into stuff. And I'm like, I would love to see Marvel hire some of them for some of the ideas they come up with.
Yeah.
Like, they just go so deep, and I love seeing it, And even with the Wiccan crown, like, I was always like, just the other day, somebody had messaged me asking me about the crown, and it's like I get emails like, hey, can I get the file for the crown? I'm like, yeah, unless you want to see me like get sued and that's not happening.
Yeah.
But I found this individual. I was like, because they were like, you must be. There was like, it must be insane seeing your crown being replicated, because this person replicated the crown. They 3D modeled themselves. And I was like, I said, it's still surreal because I was always on the other side of it before I started in the film industry. I was replicating what I seen on screen. I was like, oh, that's cool. Let me 3D model that and then print it and make it for myself, put it up on display. And the other way around, like, it still like hasn't settled in per se.
Yeah.
And even my wife actually, she's like, you don't feel? I'm like, I don't know how to feel about it.
I interviewed a director once, and he does a lot of independent films. Like, he shoots, produces, does everything himself. And we were talking, and he said exactly the same thing that you said. He was like, yeah, my wife was just asking me, like, do I feel like, have I made it now? And it still just ain't hit me. And, I wonder if, and someone had left a comment under my video, and they was like, I wonder if it's sometimes with maybe our community, it maybe feels like I don't want to necessarily say it's imposter syndrome, but maybe it's just sometimes you just don't realize, like, I've been trying to do this, I've done it, now what's next? Or maybe it's we're always reaching for the next thing. I don't know.
I think it's a mixture of all that with what you said. Imposter syndrome is a real thing. I know I've struggled with it. I mean, even to this day, I still struggle with it. Even like I said, my friend Chris, he would oftentimes we have conversations, and he's like, you have to remember now. He's like, you're a professional. Like, this is not something that you were doing on this. You were doing this on the side. He's like, you're no more in that category now.
Yeah.
And he's constantly instilling that in me. He's been like my biggest advocate. Like, outside of my wife, like, he's just been in my corner, just trying to keep me focused on this stuff. And but
it's hard,
right?
It's hard. I know, and
it gets discouraging because, like, one of the things that, and especially one of the things I'm struggling with now is, like, you have people, they say, like, you're so talented, but there's no work. No work is coming in, and then you start doubting yourself, And like I was trying to explain to my wife, I'm like, when the work is not coming in, I said, I was trying to explain to her that when you apply for a job, I said, and you get a rejection, or the person says, hey, we moved on. I'm like, you're able to bounce from it because it's more or less like, not to say that you don't feel a way about it, but it's not as personal because it's just like a desk job. Like, you say, okay, I'll move on to the next thing. Versus me, when I put my resume out there with my portfolio, I feel like it's a hit against my work, like my artistry, versus like, hey, this is another job. I don't care. I can move on. So I was trying to explain to her, like, why it kind of hits a little harder, because she was trying to figure out, like, she's like, why does it affect you so bad?
Right.
I'm like, because I'm thinking it's me as lacking ability in my artistry.
Right.
Versus where if you fill out an application for a desk job and you don't get it, it's like, okay, well, maybe I just don't have experience. I'm just going to something else. I'm like, it's taking a hit on my confidence in terms of my work.
Me and my homeboy was talking about this too. Do you think it's more so like a scarcity mindset? Like it's already, we're already not like here. A lot of us are not here. So is it more so you feel like it's just not enough room for everybody? And is that why you take it personal, or is it just really you think it's something to do with your artistry?
I think that's a little bit of that. And I don't know if you can include this if you want or not. And I can't help but sometimes think about like how much diversity plays into it as well. In terms of like if I'll get work versus I won't get work versus somebody else that may not be as skilled.
Right.
Just because of the connection or other things.
Right.
So I all that plays into it, like all that runs through my head. But like I said, you know, my wife, Chris, other people will say like you're talented. So I try and keep that in the back of my mind.
Right.
Try not to let it take as much of a hit on me. And to be honest with you, at the end of the day, I know what I'm capable of. And I would love the opportunity to expand out more. And it goes, like, for instance, like I want to work with Ruth Carter. And I only got to meet her for like half a second. She was on a Zoom call with Russell. And I'm like, Russell, introduce me, please.
Oh, man.
Like he got on camera. She said, hey. And then she made a joke and then that was it. And then she came down here to Virginia to do they had a Black Panther display in Jamestown. And I actually missed the display because I wanted to like go up and meet her, introduce myself and say, hey, like unbeknownst to you, we did start working together on this project. And I would love to get the opportunity to, work with you. If I feel like if I had just like those kind of opportunities to kind of like just showcase what I could really do, it'll be nice. But, you know, I'm like, everything's happened when it's supposed to. That's how
for sure.
That's my mind frame. So it's just not.
I got you, Daryl. I got you. I'm talking to Hannah Bleacher in a couple weeks. I got you. I'm gonna put in a word for you because you know she does set design for all of Ryan Coogler's stuff. She did Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, Sinners. Wow. She's in Africa now. She won an Oscar. For it.
Wow.
For Black Panther. But she's in Africa now, and she's doing Children of Blood and Bone. Gina Prince Wood is directing that. And she was talking about like everything that she done on Sinners, and I said I need to interview you. I've been trying to interview you since Black Panther, and she was like, "Send me a DM. Well, let's talk about it." So we're trying to get our dates together. She's on a different time zone because she's in. I'm gonna send her your stuff. I got you. Okay. Next question. Spider-Man No Way Home and Peter's Spidey Pack.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about that design?
So that started off, that was one of those ones where the concept art came in, but this one wasn't like fully fleshed out. To be honest with you, I don't even know who the concept artist was on this one. It was literally like a little cropped picture of a sketch, what you see like the shape of the actual Spidey Pack. And it was, from what I was told, it was supposed to be a little bit more than what it ended up being in the actual movie, because what happened was it was supposed to be sitting in this like, the machine is in the actual movie for like I don't even think a half second. Like he literally like, you see it in the corner of the room, but it's supposed to be charging on this huge like 3D printer looking base thing, and basically that's what holds his nano suit. So that's like you know how Tony Stark has the arc reactor where his nano suit comes out of. Well, Peter's own sits in that Spidey Pack, and what you don't see is what we developed into that Spidey Pack was when you open it, the Iron Spider suit has the tentacles. So when you open the Spidey Pack, you see the tentacles in the Spidey Pack. To signify that it's sitting in the and that one, funny story about that one. At that time I was working on Hawkeye, Spider-Man, and I think we started She-Hulk around that time. So I was working on all three. And we were going down the list of stuff that Russell needed. And he's like, hey, whatever happened to the Spidey Pack? And I'm like, hey, when do you need it? And he's like, tomorrow. And I'm like, that design was done. I literally pulled almost an all-nighter to get that done.
Yeah.
I'm like, how much? I was like, do you want to bet to see if I can get this done by tomorrow? And he's like, no. And so I literally got it done the next day, and got it off to them, and they printed it. And
Crazy. So I don't know if you heard or not, but Black Panther 3, Denzel Washington, he's told everybody he's going to be in Black Panther 3. He just leaked it or whatever. So when you're doing, and this is just an example, so when you're doing like either like concept art or some type of costume design, right? Let's say you get a call and they say, hey, we need you to design maybe some clothes or even a weapon for, let's just say Denzel. We're just going to use him since he's already kind of outed themselves. Visually, when you're creating, do you need to know like what that actor looks like to complete your process? And I guess this kind of goes a little bit hand in hand with Wiccan's crown. You kind of already knew what Wanda's crown looked like. Or is it more so like free will? Like, hey, we have Denzel. We want the colors to be red and white. Are you more so like, okay, can I like see what he's going to look like or a picture? Or is it more so like, I know what Denzel looks like. I got it. I know what I'm doing. How does that work?
I think in terms of like when we were doing props, it was more or less time period, setting in like what that piece is going to be used in, or used for. And if it's, how can I say this? Because props kind of spanned over just weapons. Like I think when people just think weapons, like a lot of jewelry pieces are including props. So like something like that, like if it was a jewelry piece, I would try and get as much visual aids as I can in terms of like what does this person have on, what are they wearing, so it can kind of like for instance Gamora's gun, we had the actual like holster for it. So for that one, I was like, hey, can I see what her outfit is kind of going to look like, so we can kind of incorporate it into the outfit. But like in terms of props, like it's like a mixture of between like the technical part, like I need measurements, like how big does this need to be, and then sometimes Russ would be like, well, the director kind of has this vision of this is how it's gonna look. Now there's nothing sketched out or anything, like they just in their mind it kind of looks like this.
Right.
And then a lot of the times I had free range on color choices. So, it kind of...
It's going to differ from project to project, director to director,
Right, depending on what it is that's needed and what's being called for, even down to, like, what the finish is going to be. Because sometimes, like, Russell will send a part out to be manufactured in metal, the hero prop. So it just depends on, like, what it calls for. So that's kind of how, like, we run through. And then a lot of times, like, I'm pulling from real world references, like, not a mood board per se, but I'll pull a lot of references, and like especially if it's a weapon, kind of like get silhouettes and start looking at stuff like that, and kind of like start working from there and design. Like Guardians of the Galaxy, like to be honest with you, up until that point, I hadn't modeled a lot of guns, and so I like. That was probably the project that I did the most guns on. Like, I have like a whole library just of like, we went through so many different guns, like, and just researching different kind of sci-fi guns, and then like just like I guess from the previous movies, they had all the guns, and he had like a table just spread out full of guns, and just looking through them all and making sure that they kind of don't look the same, but they look different. Right. They're still within that world. And then like one of the notes was like, hey, they have to look like beat up and used and were kind of rusty. Like that was the whole kind of vibe with the guns and everything. So,
got it.
But yeah, that's kind of the process.
Werewolf by Night. What did you do on that project?
So actually I did the Bloodstone.
Okay.
I did the Bloodstone. That one was, that one was a funny one. My initial design was an actual like a ruby almost, so like a polished stone. And then we got the notes back. They were like, they wanted to be like an actual stone, right? and I did like a few different choices of like different shapes of stones, and they settled on the one that you see on screen. And so like they were like, all right, it needs to be housed in something. So we did a bunch of different housings. Like we went through like family crests and stuff like that. And then what led into the design that you see in terms of like the like vines and stuff wrapped around it, I did a bunch of like scroll work that kind of was that kind of design, but it was more like, elegant. And the director liked it, but they were like, well, try and make this like, it's almost like wood wrapping around the piece.
Right.
And we did that. And then I actually had the textures as wood, and then they were like, well, we want it to be copper. And that's kind of how it came about. And then I also did the little cabinet that it sits in as well.
Okay.
So I designed that as well. That one, like when I first initially started, and the book, there's some of the early concept arts are actually in the book, the art book that's out.
Okay.
So I started off like
the Werewolf by Night art book.
Yeah. There's
now
art
I gotta
book.
go grab it. Okay.
So I started off like little chests when I had the actual like diamond, like not diamond, the ruby. I had to sit in like these like highly like decorated and detailed little chests, and then we kind of got direction in terms of like height and how it needed to look and how they wanted it to look, and then kind of took it from there and did the whole design element on it. And then Russell kind of came up with the gimmick of like, hey, we needed to open like mommy put knobs at the top, and it could just kind of turn and it'd open up the doors in the front, but the glass would stick. The glass would actually be attached to one of the doors, and I think they lined the inside with like velvet. It actually came out nice. Like it came out really nice.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing was like how are they gonna? Because when I designed it, it was black, and then it had all this detail on it, and it was silver. So they were trying to figure out like the paint process for that, and they did a fantastic job from what I've seen.
Yeah. Which Loki did you work on? Season 1 or season 2?
Season 1. That one was that was only one prop. That was Boastful Loki's hammer.
Okay.
Yellow. So,
yeah.
We labeled it the scrap hammer.
Yeah.
And essentially like it was supposed to be made out of like a cut railroad track. And then like the bottom of like a big wrench. Design Johnny's came up with, and I had to model it and prep it. I think I actually printed the part for them and sent it down to Atlanta for them. But that part, when we initially did it, how Johnny drew it, it was kind of elongated, and I think people don't even know is like that hammer is like the exact measurements of Thor's hammer. So like, Russell was like, we got to get it. He's like, I want that heft to it, because we had it really like how John, like I said, he drew it. It was kind of elongated, so we shortened it. I punched in the same dimensions as Thor's hammer and kind of like lowered it down to that, and they just kind of took it from there after that.
Thor: Love and Thunder.
Thor: Love and Thunder. That was like a last minute thing. Like it came out of nowhere. I think we were wrapping up. What was I working on? I think I had just started Agatha, if I'm not mistaken. And my friend Chris was like, hey, we have this part. I did a Hercules belt buckle and his wrist guards.
Okay.
And that concept art came from Andy Park. So I was just responsible of like 3D modeling those parts, and I believe they had them done in like metal and stuff like that. So that was really kind of like small after credit thing. It was fun one to work on. It was really fast, and like we got through it. I think I finished the modeling like within a day or two, and had
that's crazy. Hawkeye. What did you do on Hawkeye?
Hawkeye was another one. I did arrowheads for the arrows.
Okay.
So like there's a scene with like there's a bunch of different like different kind of arrows. And I concepted some of them, and then some of the other artwork came from Johnny, so I modeled those. And at one point, Russell asked me to do a bow for him, and it was supposed to be a bow from like back in S.H.I.E.L.D., like the days when he first started with S.H.I.E.L.D.
Right.
So I concepted a bow, and I think they ended up not needing it. I'm not sure if they scrapped scene or whatever, but like I have a whole bow in my outfit.
Dang. Okay. I don't think I got anything else. What do you want to leave us with? Leave us some final words. Maybe I can get you back in about 2 or 3 years when you're this big, huge guy, but leave us with some final words. I'm going to send people to follow you, and, we're going to get you tied up with Ryan Coogler and Ruth Carter soon. Yeah.
Awesome. For anybody that's out there that's, that was looking for something different. I just had one of my friends that work in the industry, she encouraged somebody to get into 3D modeling, and she referenced her back to me, and just the enthusiasm that I'm seeing in her. I'm so excited to see somebody young trying to get into it, and so excited.
Right.
Like the same passion that I but still have, but somebody fresh faced to it, and they're so enthusiastic about it. We have our kids that, that show them something different,
Right.
My boys, they see it, and at first they didn't really understand it. And I don't even think they really grasp like what it is that I actually do. They see it on the screen.
Right.
And they actually like grasp it and understand it to the extent that other people do. Even now when we go out, like just the other day, we were selling, somebody was selling Girl Scout cookies in our neighborhood. And I don't know how my wife and the guy got to talking about Marvel. And my wife was like, yeah, my husband did things. And a lot of times what will happen is when you tell people, they don't believe you. Especially in this area. Because even when we went, like, we saw Guardians in the regular theater, and I went, and I took my mom because she was like, "Oh, I want to see the name on the screen." And so I took her to the movies, and because she really doesn't go to the movies,
right?
She went this time, and I go to get popcorn. I come back in, and she's telling these random people sitting there. She's like, "My son worked on the movie," and they're looking at her like she's crazy, and I'm like, go around telling everybody this stuff like they're not gonna believe.
Hey, that's a mama for you. My son did that.
Exactly.
My son.
Yep.
Yes, my son did that. Yeah. They probably
and
like,
I mean, they were literally
okay.
like, you could tell like they had the puzzle, like, why is this lady talking to us and telling us this crazy thing? And so a part of you wants to like prove it, but then the other part is like, it's just not like worth it. Like,
yeah.
Whatever. Yeah, I think it's the area. Like people just don't like. They're like, okay, like how, why? No one. Yeah,
right.
And when I tell them the story, even when I do tell them the story, it's almost still like because even like before I moved on to Marvel full time, I was working on the naval base, and I would go through the process and be like, hey, I'm leaving because I'm getting ready to start working with thing, and then like some people be like, okay, like. But look, yeah, I mean, I would love to see our kids get into something different, develop their artistry more. I didn't know, that me picking up, starting 3D modeling, me starting to all of this. It wasn't a goal of mine, but it happened.
Right.
So if it happened for me, it could happen for my kids. It could happen for anybody's kids.
How big of a role do you think? Well, I say let's just keep it local. Diversity plays into that, like, because sometimes right now, Ryan Coogler is, he's doing his thing, and I'm gonna always root for Ryan Coogler, always. But he's getting to this level of the exceptional Negro, like, y'all and I love him to death, but it seems like y'all will only let him. Like when I saw Black Panther and saw that whole crew was built how it was built, I'm like, okay, that's interesting. But since him, we haven't really seen it again. Maybe with Shang-Chi, I think they had a pretty, diverse group. But it's like, don't let Ryan Coogler be the only one that y'all let facilitate this environment where maybe there is a Daryl on the set or a Ruth Carter. Ruth Carter's not in Marvel, probably, most likely without, Nate Moore and certain people looking like, okay, we're looking for these specific people for this specific reason. So to boil the question down, how big does diversity play, I guess, you see, like, even in this industry, outside of the industry? How do you feel about that take on that?
So as it relates to the industry, I will say that
because your entryway wasn't through, one of us. So your entry was through someone else. So that's why I just want to see both sides of the coin.
I think it's, and as it relates to like Ryan, I feel like he's proven himself, right? And I want to. I feel like that's part of it. Like we're gonna give this person a chance, and now that he has been tried and tested, he's a sure bet now for us, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it has a little bit more to do with that than the actual. And again, like when we were first discussing, it's just that they don't know where we're at, right?
Right.
They don't know where we're at. Like I'm in the industry. I'm industry, but I'm not. I'm like I don't have a lot of contacts, and I don't have a lot of people that I can reach out to in terms of like getting work and stuff like that. So
right.
As it relates to diversity during my interactions, I didn't see like a lot of it. Like to be honest with you, in my in my little venture, I probably like George is one guy that I met, super cool guy. He's down in Atlanta. And then when I was on set, I seen another individual working on, like, this is the prop side of it.
Right.
That was really it.
Yeah.
That was really it. So I don't, and then again, I think it relates back to our conversation earlier too, is that they don't know, like our community doesn't know that these jobs are available, that this field is available. And I don't think there's enough interest, because even when I approach other people about what I do and how I can help them, like there's people that are podcasts that I watch, I'm like, hey, like I reach out to them, like, hey, like I do this, right? And I can make this thing. Like if you're looking to like make products for your business, stuff like that, I can mock up that and we can go down this avenue. And I don't think they fully grasp,
of course,
what it is that I'm actually trying to tell them. And,
right.
And it's not, and I don't want to say it's like a lack of education or anything like that. It's not that. I just don't like, they're just not aware of what's out there.
No. It is a lack of education, but it's not a lack of education on. We just don't know. Like you said, when I'm watching a Marvel movie and I see the gun, I'm just like, oh, they went and got that from a prop shop. And we don't know that Daryl is sitting up at 3:00 in the morning trying to figure out how Gamora's gun is going to match up with the holster. You know what I'm saying? It is a lack of knowledge. We just don't know because you guys don't talk. You want to be artists. You want to chill. No, I don't want to talk about. I'm just, y'all got to talk. Y'all got to let people know that you exist. And, that helps a lot of people. I was telling my nephew, he's like 9 or 10 and he loves all the Marvel movies. And I was like, look, let me show you what he's doing, And he was like, wait, he made that? I said, yes, he made it. And he was like, oh, that's cool. So it's like people just don't know because y'all are artists and y'all love y'all art. You don't want to be in the spotlight. Y'all got to get out and start talking more.
Yeah, and I'll tell you the other side of that too. And I can't speak for other artists, but I'll speak for myself. Like the other side of that too is I never want to come across as being braggish or like saying like, hey, I worked on this thing. Like I never want to come across that way. And that I feel like that hurts me more than it actually helps me. Because I try to remain very humble about all this stuff. Because even my mom will come to me and she's like, you don't feel a way about this stuff? She's like, you're not. My wife, like just the other day, my wife was like, she's like, I'm so proud of you. She's like, but it doesn't seem like you're even like excited or happy about the stuff. I said, it's not that. I'm just like, I'm not letting it take me into a space where I feel like I'm up here, and I know I'm not up here. I haven't reached. Right. I still feel like I'm down here.
Of course.
Right.
I know.
So it's like, and I want to do so much more. And that's what she said. She's like, I know you want more. And I'm like, yeah, I want, there's like a certain level of notches under my belt that I want. Like my next check off is like, all right, I did Marvel. I did DC, which was my last thing that I just did. Now, like I want a notch under Star Wars. Like, I want those, that checklist. So,
right.
But yeah, like I feel like, a lot of us, we just try and like just be humble about our work and like we're just trying to, it's a grind. That's the other thing. It's like that race of trying to get to the next project. And then now with everything that's going on in the industry, work is sparse. Everything is going on. There's less and less jobs.
Right.
A lot of people, some people that I know are even like going, like even me and myself, like I got to take care of my household. So I have a job with a company.
Right.
And if something comes up along on the side, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Like over the.
And those are the stories people don't know either.
Right.
Those stories.
Right. It's like I was doing the movie in the evening and I was doing my full-time job. You know what I mean? So it's that juggle.
I'm really disappointed. Not in you. I'm just disappointed in where we are, where people like you just aren't celebrated more. You know what I'm saying? Even though you feel like, I'm really not where I want to be, but when I'm in my friend group and we're talking about, just Marvel and things like that, and I'm like, there's a concept artist. There's somebody who's doing all of this hard work, and we don't know who we are, who you are, unless we looking through your IMDb and this. And you guys need to be like out there more. And like I talk about Ruth Carter a lot. I have known about Ruth Carter since school days back in the 90s, because that's the type of nerd that I am. I'm like, who did the clothes? Who did the hair? So this is like, ever since she's done Black Panther, this is the most we've kind of seen her out. And I'm like, I am just so happy for people like that who has been doing this forever. They're not the main actor. They're not the directors. We don't really talk about the composers and people like you a lot. So y'all got to stop being humble. But you ain't got to have an ego, but y'all also got to let people know that you exist. So that's all I have. I'm going to put up my homeboy Daryl's social media. Make sure y'all follow him. Check out his YouTube. He's not active on it anymore, but he has done some great things in the past. Him being on YouTube led to him working for Marvel. So for everybody that's only getting like 100 views, just keep going.
Yep.
You never know where it might take you.
Exactly.
But like you said, keep working at your craft, and you never know where you can get.
Yep.
Any other words before we exit out? Anything else?
No, I thank you for, this was actually kind of like therapy a little bit.
But yo, it was a pleasure talking to you. We'll circle back probably in a couple years when you're on House of the Dragon. We will be following you. We're going to be on your Instagram page, and we're going to be looking for your credits on all these future projects. We are going to speak it into existence, Daryl.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, y'all, for hanging out with me. Peace.
Bye.